My daughter came home upset, and instead of telling her to be strong, I said, "It's okay to feel sad. I've got you." She broke down crying in my arms, and something inside me broke too. In that moment, I realized no one had ever said that to me as a child. I was never allowed to fall apart. Her need for comfort showed me the truth. I hadn't had a happy childhood. I had just survived it. My daughter asked me, "Mommy, were you scared when you were little too?" Her innocent question unlocked a part of me I had buried for years. It made me realize I hadn't truly faced my childhood fears, and that I'd been parenting from that hidden pain. Her words helped me start healing alongside her. I was making lunch for my daughter when she asked me the question that broke me. She was sitting at the kitchen table, swinging her legs, totally unaware of the storm she was about to stir up. Her voice was soft, curious, innocent. "Mommy, were you ever scared of your mommy?" I froze. The knife I was holding hovered midair above a tomato. My chest tightened, and just like that, the past hit me like a wave I didn't see coming. Scared? I laughed it off at first. "No, sweetheart. I had a happy childhood. That's what I always said, what I always believed, or what I needed to believe." But for the rest of the day, I couldn't stop thinking about her question. It played in my head like a whisper I couldn't ignore. "Were you ever scared of your mommy?" And suddenly, I was 5 years old again, hiding behind the couch during one of my parents' arguments. My heart beating so loud I thought it might give me away. I remembered the way my mom's voice would shift into something sharp, something cold. The way I'd hold my breath, trying not to make it worse. How I'd clean the house quietly, perfectly, hoping she'd be happy when she got home. Was that fear? I didn't call it that back then. I called it being a good girl. I told myself I was lucky, that other kids had it worse, that she loved me, that it was normal. But that question, my daughter's question, it cracked something wide open inside me. What if it wasn't a happy childhood after all? What if it was survival mode, and I didn't even know it? If you'd asked me a few years ago, I would have told you I had the best childhood. I mean, we had birthdays with balloons and homemade cakes. I always got to choose what we ate on my birthday. Spaghetti with too much cheese and garlic bread that dripped with butter. Every Christmas, we decorated the tree as a family while music played and the house smelled like cinnamon. On Sunday mornings, my mom would make pancakes shaped like hearts. I used to brag about those pancakes to my friends. I remember the laughter, so much of it. My dad had this goofy laugh that made everyone else laugh too, even if the joke wasn't funny. My mom would hum when she cleaned, and when she was in a good mood, she'd dance in the kitchen with a spoon in her hand like it was a microphone. We'd all join in, even my older brother, who pretended to be too cool for it. They worked hard, both of them. My dad did long hours at a job he didn't really love, but he never complained. My mom took care of the house, the kids, everything. Really? She could juggle a million things and still show up at my school play with snacks for everyone. It wasn't perfect, but whose family is? Sure, there were moments, little ones. Sometimes my mom would get quiet and go into her room for hours. Sometimes my dad wouldn't come home until late and everyone would walk around like they were holding their breath. But I didn't think much of it. I just knew how to stay out of the way. I thought that was normal. Looking back, I was proud of how mature I was. I knew how to clean up without being asked. I knew how to cheer my mom up. I knew how to make everyone happy. And I thought that meant I had a good childhood. I told stories about it with a smile. I defended it if anyone ever questioned it. I clung to it like a favorite sweater, a little worn down but warm and comforting. So when that question came, "Were you ever scared of your mommy?" It felt like someone tugged on that sweater and found a loose thread. Just a small one. But once it was pulled, it didn't stop unraveling, and underneath what I thought was a soft, loving memory, there was something else entirely. It didn't all come crashing down at once. It started quietly. After my daughter asked me that question, I couldn't stop thinking about it. It followed me around like a shadow. Every time I looked at her, so free, so unafraid to speak her mind, something twisted in my chest. I couldn't remember ever feeling that way as a kid. I remembered being careful. Then one night I was talking with a close friend over coffee. We were sharing stories from our childhoods, the funny, messy kind that usually make you laugh till you cry. She told me about the time she snuck out and got grounded for a week, but how her mom still left snacks at her door and wrote her silly notes. We laughed, but my mind wandered. I told her, yeah, my mom didn't really do punishments like that. She'd just stopped talking to me for a few days. My friend stopped smiling. Wait, the silent treatment? For how long? I shrugged. I don't know. Sometimes 2, 3 days, sometimes a week. I'd have to guess what I did wrong. She looked at me, really looked at me, and said quietly, "That's not normal, you know." I laughed it off. She was just overwhelmed. She had a lot on her plate. But the seed had been planted. I went home that night and sat in the dark, trying to remember if I ever actually felt safe telling my mom when I was sad, or scared, or even mad. I couldn't. I remembered tiptoeing around the house if I sensed she was in one of her moods. I remembered apologizing even when I didn't know what I'd done. I remembered scanning her face the second she walked in the door, trying to figure out if it was going to be a good day. And I remembered the way my stomach used to hurt before school performances or report card day, not because I was nervous about how I'd do, but because I was terrified of disappointing her. That wasn't love. That was fear. I had always told myself I was just a sensitive kid, that I overthought things. But now I started to wonder, what if I wasn't overly sensitive? What if I was just hyper-aware because I had to be? It was like finding old photos you used to love and realizing they weren't as perfect as you remembered. A smile that now looks forced. Eyes that seemed tired. A grip on my shoulder that felt a little too tight. I started to see the little ways I'd learned to shape myself around other people's feelings. How I never wanted to make waves. How I still, even as an adult, apologized for everything. For speaking up, for crying, for needing anything at all. I thought that was just who I was, but maybe it was who I became because of where I came from, and once I started seeing it, I couldn't unsee it. The happy childhood I had always clung to was starting to look different. Like maybe it wasn't built on joy the way I thought. Maybe it was built on silence, on tension, on fear I never named. And that realization scared me more than anything ever had. Once the cracks started to show, I couldn't help but look back through everything, my whole childhood, with a different lens. Like someone had turned on a light in a room I thought I already knew. At first, it was small things. I remembered my mom crying in the kitchen once when I was about 9. I had no idea why. My dad had slammed the door earlier, and there had been yelling, but I didn't understand what they were fighting about. Still, I found myself grabbing paper towels and quietly cleaning the counters, trying to make the room look nicer. I brought her a glass of water and told her everything would be okay. She looked at me, eyes red, and said, "You're such a good girl. You always take care of me." I used to feel proud of that memory. I thought it showed how mature I was, how loving. But now it breaks my heart. No child should be told they're responsible for keeping their parent together. And that wasn't the only time. There were so many moments I thought were normal, moments I wore like badges of honor. Like the time I stayed up past midnight helping my little brother with his science project because my parents were too busy arguing to notice he needed help. Or how I'd run to turn off the TV when I heard my dad's car pull into the driveway, so the house would be quiet and he wouldn't get mad. I thought that meant I was responsible, capable, the easy kid. But now I realize it meant something else. I was living in a constant state of alert, watching, adjusting, soothing. I was just a kid, and yet I felt like the emotional thermostat of the house. If I was cheerful, maybe things would stay calm. If I was helpful, maybe no one would explode. If I was invisible, maybe I wouldn't become a target. And it wasn't always loud. That's the thing people don't talk about enough. It wasn't always yelling or throwing things. Sometimes it was the silence that was worse, the cold shoulder. The feeling that love was something I had to earn back after messing up, even if I didn't know what I'd done. I remembered how often I said, I'm sorry. Not just when I did something wrong, but when someone else was upset. I said it to keep the peace, to stop the tension from growing, to pull people back from the edge. I became an expert at managing other people's emotions, and I thought that was a skill, something to be proud of. But the truth is, I wasn't being emotionally intelligent. I was surviving. I was navigating a house full of unpredictable feelings, and I didn't even realize it because it was all I'd ever known. Looking back, I also saw how I was praised for being low maintenance. My parents would say, "She's so easy, never asks for anything." And I wore that like a crown. I didn't realize it meant I was learning not to have needs. That somewhere along the way, I had decided asking for comfort or space or love was a burden. That realization crushed me. There was so much confusion, so much guilt. Was I making this up? Was I being dramatic, ungrateful? But the more I looked back, the more I saw how deep it went. I remembered how tightly I used to clench my fists under the dinner table, how I'd memorize every word in an argument, just in case I needed to prove I hadn't done anything wrong. How my body learned to go completely still whenever things got tense. I wasn't a carefree child. I was careful, and the worst part was, I didn't even know it. The moment everything truly shifted, the moment I couldn't go back, came during a conversation with my younger brother. We hadn't talked about our childhood much. We joked. About the silly stuff. The weird food Mom used to make, the old carpet in the living room, the way Dad would fall asleep in front of the TV. But we never really dug into the heavy parts. I think we both assumed there wasn't much to dig into. But one night, we were sitting on his back porch, just the two of us, sipping coffee in the cold. Something about the quiet made it feel safe. I don't remember how we got there, but I said almost without thinking, "Did it ever feel like we were walking on eggshells around Mom?" He didn't say anything right away. Then he let out this breath, long and slow, like he'd been holding it for years. "All the time," he said. "I used to pretend I was asleep just so I wouldn't have to talk to her." I stared at him, stunned. "You did that too?" He nodded. "I used to wait until I heard her mood. If her voice was sharp, I'd stay in my room. If she was quiet, I'd avoid eye contact. If she was cheerful, I'd get nervous, like it wouldn't last. It was like hearing my own thoughts in someone else's mouth. I felt my throat close up. I thought I was just sensitive," I whispered. He looked at me and said something I'll never forget. "We weren't sensitive. We were scared." That hit me in the chest. All at once, a flood of memories came back. Ones I hadn't thought about in years, or ones I'd twisted into something prettier. But there was one memory that came roaring to the surface. I was around 11. My parents had been fighting all evening, and my mom slammed her bedroom door. My dad left the house without saying where he was going. My little brother was crying. He was only 6. I remember pulling him into my room and locking the door. I gave him my stuffed bear and told him a made-up story until he stopped crying. Later that night, I crept into the kitchen to clean up the dishes, just in case Mom came out and got upset. That the house was a mess. I remember standing on a chair, scrubbing plates with tiny hands that were shaking. I was so tired I could barely see straight. And I remember saying to myself, I have to make sure everyone's okay. I was 11. No child should feel that kind of pressure. But in that moment, I wasn't a child. I was a peacekeeper, a fixer, a shield, and I had completely buried that memory until that night on the porch. When it came back, I broke down. I cried harder than I had in years. The kind of cry that leaves you gasping for air. I cried for the little girl I was, the one who thought it was her job to hold the house together, the one who believed love had to be earned, the one who never felt safe enough to fall apart. My brother didn't say anything for a while. He just let me cry. And then he said, "You always looked like you had it together. I didn't know you were scared too." That's when I realized I wasn't alone. But we had both been taught to carry it quietly. It hit me. All those years. I thought I had a happy childhood. I wasn't happy. I was surviving. I was monitoring, fixing, managing everyone else's emotions to stay safe. I wasn't a naturally calm kid. I was trained to be calm because chaos was the alternative, and once I saw it for what it was, I couldn't unsee it. The truth was painful, but it was also the beginning of healing, because for the first time, I wasn't pretending anymore. After that night on the porch, I couldn't go back to pretending. For a while, I didn't know what to do with everything I was feeling. It was like carrying around a box that suddenly burst open, and now all the pieces of my life were scattered on the floor. I didn't know where to begin. I just knew something inside me had changed. I started waking up with this heavy weight in my chest. Grief, I think. Not just for the things that happened, but for the things that didn't. I grieved the version of my childhood I thought I had. The one with the birthday cakes and pancake mornings and I love yous I used to hold on to like proof. I had wrapped that version around me like armor. And now it was gone. That grief felt messy and confusing. I still loved my parents. I wasn't trying to rewrite everything into something horrible. But I couldn't ignore the truth anymore. That I had survived a home that didn't always feel safe, and I had paid for that survival in quiet, invisible ways. The biggest cost? Myself. I started noticing things I'd never questioned before. How I apologized constantly, even when I hadn't done anything wrong. How I couldn't relax unless everyone around me was okay. How I said yes when I wanted to say no. And how I panicked at the idea of disappointing anyone. Saw how hard I worked to make things perfect. My home, my relationships, even myself. As if being perfect would keep me from being rejected, ignored, or unloved. Just like when I was little, tiptoeing around the house, cleaning up messes I didn't make. That realization hurt, but it also made sense. It explained so much. The anxiety, the people-pleasing, the emotional exhaustion I couldn't name. So I started doing the scariest thing I've ever done. I slowed down. I looked inward. I found a therapist. In our first session, I cried before I even finished saying hello. It was like my body already knew this was the place where I could stop pretending. I told her about my happy childhood and how it had started to unravel. She didn't flinch. She didn't question me. She just nodded and said, "That sounds like a child who learned to survive, and I'm so sorry you had to." I started journaling, pages and pages of memories, questions, and feelings I'd pushed away for decades. I wrote letters to my younger self. I apologized to her for all the times I told her to be quiet, to be good, to hold it all together. I told her she never should have had to be so strong, and I started having long, honest conversations with my brother, with my partner, even with friends who had their own versions of complicated childhoods. Every time I shared a piece of my truth, I felt a little lighter, a little more real. Healing didn't happen all at once. It came in waves, some gentle, some that knocked me off my feet. There were days I doubted everything, days I felt angry, then guilty for feeling angry. Days I wanted to crawl back into the safety of denial. But little by little, I began to find pieces of myself, the parts that weren't shaped by fear or responsibility. I found the part of me that likes quiet, mornings, not because they're safe, but because they're peaceful. The part of me that doesn't need to fix everything just to be enough. The part that can say, "I'm not okay" without shame. I'm not fully healed. I don't think healing has a finish line, but I'm more honest now, more awake. I don't flinch when I look at the past anymore. I hold it gently, like a photograph of someone I used to be, and for the first time, I feel like I'm not surviving. I'm beginning to live. The moment that brought it all full circle happened on a rainy afternoon, the kind where everything feels quiet and close. My daughter had had a rough day at school, a fight with a friend, a forgotten homework assignment, a lunchbox that spilled everywhere. She came home with slumped shoulders and watery eyes. The old version of me, the one who lived in survival mode, would have tried to fix it, brighten it, tell her to look on the bright side. But instead, I knelt down beside her, brushed the hair from her face, and said, "It's okay to be upset. You don't have to be cheerful right now. I've got you." And she broke. She sobbed into my shirt, tiny hands clutching my arms. And I just held her. In that moment, something inside me broke too, but in a different way. Not in pain, in healing. I realized I had never had that kind of moment growing up. I had never felt free to fall apart. I had never been told it was okay to just feel, and now here I was, giving that to her. I didn't stop her from crying. I didn't tell her to be strong. I didn't make her feel like she had to earn my comfort. I was the mother I always needed. Later that night, as she slept peacefully, her face soft, her body relaxed in a way I don't think mine ever was at that age, I sat beside her bed and whispered, "You're safe. You're allowed to be messy. You don't have to protect anyone. I've got you." I was saying it to her. But I think I was also saying it to myself. I finally understood that telling the truth about my childhood didn't make me ungrateful. It didn't make me dramatic or selfish. It made me honest. And it made me free. The guilt I'd carried for so long, the guilt for seeing things differently, for naming what hurt me, for needing more than what I got, I let it go, because it wasn't my fault. I was just a child, doing her best to survive. I was never meant to be the calm in the storm. I was meant to be sheltered from it. And the more I made peace with that truth, the more I felt the tightness in my chest loosen. The more I could breathe deeply, without flinching. The more I could love, really love, without fear hiding. In the background, I don't hate my parents. I understand they were struggling in ways I may never fully know. I believe they loved me the best way they knew how. But love, I've learned, doesn't erase harm. And survival doesn't equal safety. That rainy afternoon with my daughter didn't fix everything. But it gave me something I'd never had before. Proof that the cycle could stop. That healing wasn't just about me. It was about what I could now pass down. Not fear, not silence, but softness, truth, freedom. And for the first time, I didn't feel broken or ashamed. I felt whole. Telling this story has been one of the hardest, most vulnerable things I've ever done. For so long, I stayed silent. Not because I didn't remember, but because I didn't believe I had the right to feel what I felt. I told myself other people had it worse. I told myself my parents tried their best. I told myself to be grateful, to move on. But healing doesn't come from pretending. It comes from honesty. From looking back and saying, that hurt, that shaped me, that wasn't okay. And also from saying, but I'm allowed to grow past it now. Reclaiming my voice, naming the things I once buried, has been like learning how to breathe again. I didn't realize how much of myself I had tucked away just to stay safe. I didn't realize that the anxiety, the people-pleasing, the perfectionism, all those things weren't flaws. They were survival skills. And if you're watching this and realizing that maybe, just maybe, your happy childhood wasn't so happy either, I want you to know this. You're not broken. You're not crazy. You're not being dramatic. You were surviving in the only ways you knew how. And that's incredibly brave. It's okay to grieve the childhood you thought you had. It's okay to feel angry, sad, confused, even if you love your family. It's okay to tell the truth. Your story matters, your pain matters, and your healing is possible. You are allowed to live fully, not just function. You are allowed to feel safe, not just endure. You are allowed to take up space, even if you were taught to stay small. Thank you for being here, for listening, for letting my story sit with you for a while. If this story touched you or made you reflect on your own past, please like this video, leave a comment to share your thoughts or experiences, and subscribe for more stories like this. And if there's someone in your life who might need to hear they weren't alone, that they weren't weak, just surviving, please share this with them. We heal when we're seen, and I see you.